Let me ask you something. Have you ever promised yourself you'd change, only to find yourself falling back into the same old habits? Maybe it's waking up early. Maybe it's eating healthy. Maybe it's finally starting that business, writing that book, or leaving behind that toxic relationship. You told yourself, this time I'll do it. And yet, weeks later, you're right back where you started. Why does this happen? Because your conscious mind made a decision, but your subconscious mind never agreed. Your subconscious mind is like the operating system running quietly in the background. It controls 95% of your daily thoughts, habits, and actions. Think about it. You don't consciously decide how to brush your teeth every morning. You just do it. You don't think about how to drive once you've learned. Your body just moves. That's the subconscious at work, that it's powerful. But here's the problem. Most of our subconscious programming was installed when we were children, by parents, by teachers, by society, by moments we don't even remember, but that still control us today. So when you say, I want to be successful, but deep down your subconscious still whispers, asterisk, you're not good enough. Yes, I want you to imagine your subconscious mind as a garden. Every belief is a seed. Some are flowers. Some are weeds. And here's the truth. Many of us are living in gardens we didn't even plant. If you grew up hearing, money is the root of all evil. Guess what seed took root? If you heard, you'll never amount to anything. Guess what plant is choking your growth? But here's the good news. Just like any garden, you can replant it. You can pull out the weeds. You can choose what grows. Who wins? So, how do we reprogram the subconscious? Not with willpower, not with temporary motivation, but with repetition, visualization, and emotion. Repetition. The subconscious learns through consistency. Just like learning to ride a bike. It takes practice. Daily affirmations, journaling, consistent action. That's how you override old code. Visualization. When you see it vividly, your mind can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. Athletes do this before games. They picture the perfect shot, the perfect swing. By the time they're on the field, their subconscious already believes they've won. Emotion. Logic doesn't move the subconscious. Emotion does. Think about it. The memories burned deepest into you are the ones that made you feel joy, fear, heartbreak, love. If you attach deep emotion to a new belief, your subconscious accepts it faster. A man once said, I'll never be good at public speaking. I just don't have the confidence. That belief was planted in him as a teenager when he froze on stage, and everyone laughed. For years, he avoided every chance to speak. His career suffered. His relationship stayed shallow. But then he started small. Every morning, he looked in the mirror and told himself, I am a confident speaker. My voice matters. He visualized himself standing on stage, calm, powerful, inspiring people. At first, it felt fake. But after months of repetition and emotion, something changed. The belief took root. The subconscious rewired. And today, that man is speaking in front of you right now. Because that man is me. That here are some key points related to this. Your subconscious mind controls 95% of your daily actions and habits. Most of your programming comes from childhood experiences and beliefs. Think of the subconscious as a garden. Some seeds are flowers, others are weeds, but you can replant it. Reprogramming happens through repetition, visualization, and emotion. The subconscious doesn't respond to logic. It responds to feelings and consistency. You hold the power to rewrite your inner script and transform your life. Have you ever noticed how much of your life feels like it's happening on autopilot? You wake up, reach for your phone without thinking, scroll through the same apps, brush your teeth the same way, walk to the kitchen, make the same breakfast, sit in the same chair, check the same notifications. You don't stop to ask, why am I doing it this way? You just do it, day after day. Almost like a passenger in your own body. That's not coincidence. That's the subconscious mind at work. Scientists say that up to 95% of what we do each day is guided not by conscious choice, but by deep, ingrained programming. And that programming is so invisible, so quiet, that you often don't even realize it's there. Think about learning to drive for the first time. Do you remember how overwhelming it felt? Your hands grip the steering wheel like your life depended on it. Your eyes darting between the mirrors, your foot trembling on the pedals. You had to think about every single action. Signal, brake, turn, look left, look right. Don't forget the seatbelt. At first, it felt impossible. But after enough repetition, something incredible happened. One day, without even realizing it, you got in the car, turned the key, and drove off, all while talking to a friend or thinking about what to eat for dinner. What changed? The subconscious took over. The conscious mind no longer had to micromanage. The skill was downloaded into your mental operating system. Now you just drive, automatically. And that's the power and the danger of the subconscious mind. Because it doesn't just store useful skills like driving or brushing your teeth. It also stores the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you can't do. Imagine a child, maybe 8 years old, standing in a classroom. He raises his hand, excited to answer a question. His voice trembles as he gives the wrong answer. The class laughs. The teacher shakes her head. He sits down, face burning, heart pounding. In that moment, his subconscious records a message. Speaking up is dangerous. I'm not smart enough. He doesn't consciously choose to believe this. It just slips in quietly, like a seed planted in fertile soil. Years later, as an adult, he avoids meetings. He keeps his ideas to himself. He hesitates every time he thinks about applying for that dream job. Not because he can't do it, but because his subconscious is still running the old program. Don't speak. Stay safe. One embarrassing moment in childhood became an invisible script shaping decades of his life. This is why willpower so often fails us. You can stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself, I'll wake up early tomorrow, or I'll stop procrastinating. But if your subconscious programming says, you're lazy, you've always been lazy, this is just who you are, then guess who wins? It's like trying to swim upstream while the current is pulling you back. You can make progress for a little while, but eventually you get exhausted and drift back to where you started. That's why so many people feel stuck. They think they're broken. They think they lack discipline. In reality, they're just living according to a script they didn't even write. One of the most haunting examples of this comes from people who grow up hearing the same phrase over and over again. Money doesn't grow on trees. On the surface, it seems harmless, just something parents say. But the subconscious doesn't filter. It doesn't say, oh, this is just a figure of speech. It records a message. It plants the seed. So what does that child grow up believing? That money is scarce. That money is hard to get. That wanting more is greedy. And without ever realizing it, their entire relationship with wealth is built on lack. They might sabotage opportunities, push away abundance, or even feel guilty when success comes. Not because they consciously decided to reject wealth, but because their subconscious programmed them to believe it was wrong to have it. It works the same way with love. A little girl grows up in a home where her father leaves. Maybe he didn't mean to. Maybe life got complicated. But the subconscious doesn't care about context. It just absorbs a wound. She learns, without words, that love leaves. So later in life, every time she meets someone who could treat her well, her subconscious sabotages it. She pushes him away, or she clings too tightly, or she finds herself drawn to partners who will eventually abandon her, all because the subconscious has been whispering the same lies since childhood. Love isn't safe. Love always leaves. And she wonders why she can't seem to break the cycle. She blames herself, not realizing that the subconscious has been steering the wheel all along. We like to believe we are free, rational beings making conscious choices. But most of the time, we're simply running patterns. If you ever found yourself saying, why do I always end up in the same situation? Why do I keep dating the same kind of person? Why do I keep sabotaging my own progress? The answer is simple. Your subconscious is repeating what it knows. It prefers familiarity over happiness. It prefers the comfort of the known over the risk of the unknown. That's why people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, habits that destroy them. The subconscious says, at least this is familiar. At least I know this. At least I've survived this before. And so they stay, stuck, on autopilot, dreaming of change, but living the same, But here's the key. The subconscious mind isn't your enemy. It's not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to protect you. That's its job. It takes whatever experiences you've had, whatever messages you've heard, and it builds rules. Rules designed to keep you safe. Rules like, don't speak up, you'll get hurt, or don't try, you'll fail, or don't love too much, they'll leave. The problem is that these rules are outdated. They were created in moments of fear or pain, but they're still running decades later, long after the danger is gone. It's like an old computer program slowing down a modern machine. It's not that the system is broken. It just needs an update. Think of the subconscious as a loyal guard dog. It doesn't question orders. If you tell it, strangers are dangerous, it will bark at everyone who walks by. If you tell it, I'm not worthy, it will protect you by pushing away opportunities that don't match that belief. It listens. It obeys. The tragedy is that most of us don't realize we're the ones who trained the dog in the first place. Or worse, someone else did. Parents, teachers, society, media, all of them gave commands. And now, years later, that loyal guard dog is still following orders you don't even remember giving. So when I tell you that your subconscious controls 95% of your life, I don't mean that as a warning to scare you. I mean it as a wake-up call. Because if most of your life is being run on autopilot, then the question you have to ask yourself is, whose program am I really living? Whose voice is really guiding my choices? Is it mine? Or is it someone else's, planted years ago when I was too young to know better? When you were a child, your mind was wide open. You didn't question. You didn't filter. You didn't argue. Everything you heard, everything you saw, everything you felt sank deep into you and became truth. That's how the subconscious works in childhood. It's like soft clay, easily shaped by the hand around it. Psychologists say that by the age of 7, most of your core beliefs about life, love, money, success, and even your own worth are already formed. Think about that for a moment. By 7 years old, the blueprint for your entire life is being written. And the most haunting part? You didn't get to choose most of it. It was handed to you. Picture a little boy sitting at the dinner table. He's drawing on a scrap of paper, eyes glowing with imagination. He proudly holds up his picture to show his father. Maybe it's messy, maybe it doesn't make sense, but in his world it's magic. His father glances up, tired from work, and says, "That's not how you draw a house. Do it right." He doesn't mean to wound him, but those words pierce. In that moment, the boy's subconscious records a message. My creativity isn't good enough. I'm not good enough. Decades later, that same boy, now a grown man, hesitates every time he wants to start a new project, write a book, or share an idea. He second-guesses himself, not realizing he's still carrying the echo of one careless comment spoken years ago. Or think of a little girl standing in front of the mirror, watching her mother get dressed. She hears her mother sigh and mutter, "I look so fat. I hate my body." The girl doesn't analyze or question. She absorbs. She learns that beauty equals worth, that self-criticism is normal, that love for yourself is conditional. So she grows up dieting, comparing, chasing approval, looking at her own reflection with the same disgust she saw in her mother's eyes. Not because she chose to, but because her subconscious was programmed that way before she even understood the meaning of the word self-esteem. This is how childhood beliefs sneak into adulthood. They don't announce themselves. They don't say, "Hello, I'm an old memory shaping your decisions." They just run quietly in the background. If you grew up hearing, "Money doesn't grow on trees," you probably develop an invisible scarcity mindset. If you grew up hearing, "Stop crying, be strong," you probably struggle to express emotions. If you grew up hearing, "You'll never amount to anything," a part of you still questions whether you're capable, even when you've achieved more than your parents ever dreamed of. Childhood programming is sticky. It lingers. It sets the limits on the invisible fence you live inside. I once heard a man tell a story about elephants in India. He said when elephants are young, trainers tie one of their legs to a wooden post with a thick rope. The elephant pulls and struggles, but no matter what it does, it can't break free. Eventually, it gives up. It learns, "I can't escape." Years later, that same elephant, now grown, strong enough to uproot trees, is tied with the same kind of rope to the same kind of post. It could easily break free, but it doesn't even try. Why? Because its subconscious remembers the old lesson, I'm not strong enough. That's exactly how childhood beliefs work. We're all elephants tied to ropes we could break, if only we realize how powerful we become. The most striking thing about childhood programming is how little it takes to shape a lifetime. A single comment, a single look of disapproval, a single moment of shame can become a permanent script. I've met people who still carry the sting of being called stupid in second grade, who still hear the laughter of classmates echoing in their minds, who still make decisions today from the fear of repeating that humiliation. When you're a child, you don't have the defenses you have now. You don't say, that teacher was having a bad day, or, my dad didn't mean it. You say, this is who I am, and then you carry it like gospel. It's not just the negative words that shape us. Sometimes it's the silence. A child who longs for affection but never hears, I'm proud of you, grows up questioning their worth. A child who never hears, I love you, doesn't just miss those words in the moment. They internalize the belief that love must be earned, that they are not lovable by default. And so, as adults, they chase validation in unhealthy relationships. They overachieve just to feel seen. They exhaust themselves proving they're worthy, because the subconscious is still playing the old, silent tape. You're not enough unless someone approves of you. One of the most devastating examples comes from children who grow up in unstable homes. Imagine a boy whose parents fight every night. He lies in bed, clutching his pillow, heart racing, praying it will stop. He doesn't understand that his parents' battles are about their own wounds, their own struggles. His subconscious makes it personal. It whispers, if I were better, they'd be happy. If I were lovable, they wouldn't fight. This must be my fault. And so he grows up carrying guilt for storms he never caused. As a man, he struggles with intimacy, fearing that every relationship will collapse, because deep down he still believes love is fragile, unsafe, doomed. And yet, here's the heartbreaking part. Most parents don't mean to program their children with pain. They're simply repeating their own scripts. A father who says, be tough, don't cry, is repeating what his father told him. A mother who says, money is hard to earn, is echoing what her mother taught her. The cycle continues, generation after generation, unless someone becomes aware enough to break it. Childhood programming is rarely intentional, but it's always impactful. It seeps in through words, actions, tone, even unspoken emotions. Children don't just hear what parents say. They absorb who parents are, and so much of this programming hides in plain sight. You might not even recognize it until you pause and examine the patterns of your life. Why do you keep choosing partners who treat you poorly? Why do you freeze every time you have to speak in public? Why do you feel guilty for resting, as if you must always be productive? These aren't random quirks. They're echoes of childhood. They're the rope still tied to your leg. They're the voices of parents, teachers, siblings, society, whispering old messages into your subconscious, long after people themselves have gone silent. The tragedy is that many people never question these beliefs. They live their entire lives inside invisible cages built in childhood. Cages of fear, cages of shame, cages of limitation. They never realized the lock was never real. They never realized the door was open the whole time. Your subconscious mind is like a garden, whether you've chosen to tend it or not. Every day, seeds are being planted. Some seeds grow into flowers, beliefs that give you confidence, hope, and strength. Others grow into weeds, beliefs that choke your potential, drain your energy, and crowd out the beauty you were meant to cultivate. The most important truth is this. The garden never stops growing. You are always planting. You are always watering. The only question is, where are you planting? Are you feeding flowers or are you feeding weeds? Think of someone who grew up hearing, you can do anything you set your mind to. That's a flower. It blooms into resilience, into courage, into the quiet conviction that even when life is hard, they are capable of overcoming it. Now think of someone who grew up hearing, people like us never get ahead. That's a weed. It coils around their confidence. It creeps into every decision. It whispers, why bother? Every time they dare to dream bigger, And the garden doesn't know the difference between good seeds and bad ones. The soil doesn't reject weeds. It nurtures whatever is planted, whether it helps you thrive or holds you back. The tragedy is that most of us inherit gardens we didn't plant. Seeds dropped into our soil by parents, by teachers, by society, by the media we consumed when we were too young to question it. A father tells his son, "Stop crying. Boys don't cry." That seed grows into a man who feels unsafe expressing emotions, who bottles everything up until he explodes. A teacher says, "You'll never be good at math." That seed grows into a young woman who avoids careers she might have excelled in, not because she couldn't, but because she believed she wasn't capable. A society flashes images of beauty that are unattainable, airbrushed, and filtered. That seed grows into people who never feel comfortable in their own skin, who measure themselves against illusions and always come up short. The garden fills, often not with what we want, but with what others planted. But here's the hope: gardens can be changed. Weeds can be pulled. Soil can be renewed. New seeds can be planted, and over time, flowers can bloom where once it was only overgrowth. The process is not immediate. Anyone who's ever tended a real garden knows this. It takes patience, consistency, and attention. You don't plant a seed today and expect a tree tomorrow. You nurture it, water it, give it sunlight, and trust the process. The subconscious mind works the same way. The beliefs you want to live by must be planted with intention and repeated until they take root. I knew a man who grew up poor, always hearing, "We can't afford that. Money is too hard to come by." Those words became the weeds in his garden. Every time he earned a little extra, he found ways to lose it. He'd spend recklessly or walk away from opportunities, almost as if something inside him believed he wasn't allowed to hold on to wealth. But when he realized this was just programming, just weeds, he began planting new seeds. Every day, he repeated to himself, "There's more than enough. I am capable of creating abundance. Money flows to me and through me." At first, the new seed seemed small, powerless compared to the thick weeds that had been growing for decades. But with repetition, with focus, those flowers began to bloom. His actions changed. His opportunities expanded. And slowly, the garden that once suffocated him began to nourish him. The subconscious is stubborn. Old weeds don't vanish overnight. Sometimes they show up again when you least expect them. Imagine you've been working hard to build your confidence. You planted seeds of self-belief. You watered them with affirmations. You visualize yourself succeeding. Then one day, a voice from the past sneaks back in. Maybe you make a mistake at work, and suddenly you hear your old teacher's voice. "You'll never get this right." That's a weed pushing its way back into the light. But just like in a garden, you don't quit because a weed appeared. You pull it out. You remind yourself that weeds are natural, but they don't define the garden. There's an old proverb that says, "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." The same is true for your subconscious. Maybe you wish you'd started earlier. Maybe you feel like your garden is overrun with weeds, too far gone to save. But the truth is, it's never too late. You can start today. You can plant new seeds right now, in this moment. Seeds of love, seeds of courage, seeds of possibility. And the moment you do, the garden begins to change, even if you can't see it yet. I want you to imagine walking through your own garden. Picture it vividly. What do you see? Are there flowers blooming? Or do you see weeds curling through the soil? Do you see a wild mess that overwhelms you? Or do you see order and beauty? And more importantly, whose seeds are you finding there? Are they yours, chosen and planted with intention? Or are they someone else's, left behind from a past you didn't choose but still live inside? Because awareness is the first step. You can't change what you won't acknowledge. The moment you notice the weeds, you gain the power to remove them. I once read a story about a young woman who grew up constantly hearing her mother say, "You're just like me, you'll never be happy." That phrase became the dominant weed in her subconscious garden. She sabotaged every relationship, pushed away every moment of joy, always waiting for happiness to crumble. Then one day, she realized those words were not truth. They were just seeds her mother had dropped into her soil. She decided to plant something new. "I am worthy of joy. I am free. to create my own life. She repeated it daily, even when it felt fake. She visualized herself laughing freely, surrounded by love. Slowly, she began to notice changes. She smiled more. She trusted more. She allowed herself to stay in happiness without waiting for the ground to collapse. Her mother's seed no longer defined her garden. She chose her own. And that's the secret most people never learn. Your subconscious mind does not care what you plant. It doesn't judge. It doesn't question. It doesn't decide for you. It simply takes whatever you feed it and grows it. That's why you must be intentional. Because whether you're planting hope or fear, courage or doubt, love or shame, your garden will grow either way. The soil doesn't say no. The only difference is what you choose to place in it. Every time you speak words to yourself, you're planting. Every time you replay an old memory, you're watering. Every time you allow emotion to attach to a thought, you're fertilizing. The question isn't whether you're growing something. It's what you're growing. Because the garden of your subconscious never stays still. It is always alive. It is always producing. It is always reflecting the seeds that have been sown. Reprogramming the subconscious doesn't happen by chance, and it doesn't respond to a single burst of willpower. It responds to rhythm, to consistency, to the things you repeat over and over until they sink in so deeply that they become automatic. Think back to when you learned your first language. You didn't sit down with a textbook at 2 years old and study grammar rules. You absorbed words by hearing them again and again. You repeated sounds until they stuck. You spoke clumsily at first, mixing words, stumbling, but with repetition it became second nature. Now you don't even think about it. Language is just there, flowing effortlessly from your lips. That is the same principle that governs every belief, every habit, every identity that your subconscious holds. What you repeat, you become. When people try to change, they often expect a single moment of inspiration to rewrite years of conditioning. They go to a seminar, listen to a motivational video, or make a bold declaration. From tomorrow, I will be different. For a while, the fire burns strong. They wake up early, they exercise, they push themselves to act boldly. But soon, the momentum fades. Why? Because the subconscious mind doesn't reprogram through inspiration alone. It reprograms through steady, relentless repetition. The conscious mind might get excited for a day, but the subconscious learns only when the message is carved into it again and again until it no longer feels like effort. It feels like truth. I once met a man who told me he had always believed he was unlucky. Everything that went wrong in his life seemed to confirm this belief. He would lose jobs, miss opportunities, face setbacks, and every time he shook his head and muttered, "That's just my luck." His subconscious had been repeating that phrase for decades until it became his identity. Then, one day, someone challenged him. They told him, "What if you started saying the opposite? What if, instead of repeating that you're unlucky, you started saying every single day, 'Good things always happen to me'?" At first, it sounded ridiculous to him, like lying to himself. But he tried it anyway. He said it every morning when he woke up and every night before he slept. He wrote it on sticky notes and placed them on his mirror, his desk, even the dashboard of his car. For weeks, it felt fake. But something interesting happened. Over time, his subconscious stopped resisting. The phrase no longer felt foreign. It began to feel natural. His awareness shifted. He started noticing opportunities he would have overlooked before. He started taking actions he would have hesitated on in the past. And slowly, life began to align with the new belief. Not because magic made him lucky, but because repetition rewrote his inner script, and his actions flowed from that new truth. The subconscious mind is like wet cement. Every thought pressed into it leaves an impression, but only repetition sets it in stone. Imagine pressing your hand into soft cement once. The mark may fade quickly, but if you press it again and again, day after day, eventually it hardens and the imprint becomes permanent. That is what repetition does. One affirmation may feel like nothing. One visualization may feel like pretending. But repeated affirmations, repeated visualizations, repeated emotional rehearsals, they change the shape of the mind. They make the new belief stick. Think of athletes. Before a big game, they don't just train their bodies. They train their minds through repetition. A basketball player doesn't just hope he'll make the free throw in the final seconds. He practices it thousands of times. He sees himself making the shot in his imagination again and again. By the time the real moment arrives, his subconscious has already rehearsed success so often that his body simply follows through. His conscious mind might feel pressure, but his subconscious already knows what to do. Repetition has carved the pathway so deeply that it becomes instinct. The same principle applies outside of sports. A woman who grew up believing she was unworthy of love may struggle to accept affection, but if she decides to repeat every day, "I am worthy, I am lovable, I am enough," something begins to shift. At first, her subconscious pushes back. Old voices rise up. "That's not true. You've been rejected before. You've been hurt." But if she keeps repeating, keeps speaking it into her mind, and attaching emotion to those words, the old resistance weakens. The weeds begin to loosen their grip. Slowly, she begins to believe. And as she believes, she begins to act differently. She holds her head higher. She accepts love without suspicion. She chooses relationships that honor her instead of break her. Repetition transforms her from the inside out. People often underestimate the subtle power of the words they repeat daily. They think affirmations are just silly slogans, that journaling is just writing on paper, that visualizations are just fantasies. But these are the tools of reprogramming. These are the repetitions that override old patterns. The subconscious doesn't care whether something is real or imagined. It cares about what is repeated with emotion. If you spend years repeating, "I'm not enough," then of course that belief feels real. If you spent years repeating, "Life is hard," then of course life feels like a struggle. The repetition of negativity has already reprogrammed you. The only way to break free is to consciously choose new repetitions and feed them daily until they grow stronger than the old ones. I remember hearing about a woman who wanted to overcome her fear of public speaking. Every time she stood in front of people, her heart pounded, her voice shook, her palms sweated. Her subconscious had been programmed by a childhood memory of freezing on stage. One day, she decided to change it. She started by standing in front of a mirror and saying out loud, "I am a confident speaker. My voice matters." She felt ridiculous at first, almost embarrassed to hear herself say it. But she repeated it anyway, every morning, every night. Then she took it further. She visualized herself standing on stage, calm and powerful, the audience hanging on her every word. She replayed that vision until it became vivid, until she could almost feel the warmth of the stage lights on her face. The more she repeated it, the less her subconscious resisted. And eventually, when she finally stepped on stage again, her body remembered the new script. She delivered her talk with confidence she never thought possible. Not because she discovered a magic trick, but because she repeated a new truth until her subconscious accepted it as reality. The key is consistency. A single push won't move the mountain, but steady pressure, applied daily, eventually shifts even the heaviest stone. That's why affirmations, journaling, and visualization must be practiced regularly. It's not about doing them perfectly. It's about doing them persistently. Every day you repeat a new belief, you are chiseling away at the old one. Every time you visualize your dream life, you are strengthening the pathways in your subconscious that align with that dream. Every time you speak words of power over yourself, you are planting seeds that, with enough repetition, will bloom into the life you want. Repetition is not glamorous. It's not dramatic. It's not a single thunderbolt of change. But it is the quiet, steady force that rewrites the subconscious. And those who understand this, who are willing to persist even when it feels pointless, are the ones who eventually wake up to find that the old weeds have been replaced by flowers, that the old script has been rewritten, that the subconscious has finally aligned with their conscious desires. And when that happens, change is no longer a battle. It becomes effortless, because the subconscious, once reprogrammed, stops resisting and starts working with you instead of against you. Logic doesn't move the subconscious. Emotion does. You can sit and explain to yourself all the reasons why you should change, why you should think differently, why you should break free from an old belief, but if there is no feeling attached to it, your subconscious won't listen. It doesn't speak the language of reason. It speaks the language of sensation. It is carved not by arguments, but by experiences that made you feel something so deeply you couldn't forget. Think of the moments that have stayed with you the longest. They aren't the days when nothing happened, when life felt neutral. They're the moments charged with emotion. The first time someone told you they loved you, the sting of betrayal, the thrill of winning, the ache of failure. Those feelings branded themselves into your subconscious, and they still guide your choices today. I once spoke with a man who told me he had no problem understanding intellectually that he was valuable. He read every book on self-worth, listened to podcasts, wrote notes to himself about how. You hold the pen. That's the truth most people never realize. For years, they walk around believing their life is already written, that the story has been decided, that their role has been handed to them by parents, by society, by circumstances they had no control over. But the subconscious mind, as powerful as it is not your prison. It is clay, not stone. And every day you wake up with a choice. You can keep rehearsing the old lines, the ones that were handed to you, or you can start writing new ones. The challenge is that the old script feels so real, so natural, that you mistake it for who you are. If your subconscious is always whispered, "You're not enough," then that voice feels like your own. If it is always repeated, "You'll fail," then failure feels inevitable. But those voices are not truth. They're just drafts written long ago, and you have the power to edit them. Imagine you're an actor on a stage, but instead of performing a play you love, you're stuck in a role you despise. Maybe you're cast as a timid character, always afraid, always holding back. Or maybe you're playing the struggling one, always broke, always unlucky, always behind. You didn't audition for this role. It was given to you. But you've played it for so long that the audience assumes this is who you are. Even you start to believe it. Yet here's the revelation. The script is in your hand. You can crumple up those pages at any moment. You can write new lines, step into a new role, tell a new story. The stage won't resist you. The only thing holding you in the old part is the belief that you don't have a choice. Think about people who broke cycles everyone thought were unbreakable. A young man grows up in poverty, surrounded by people who say, "This is just how life is for us." He watches his parents struggle, his neighbors settle, his friends give up on their dreams. That's the script, generation after generation. But one day, he decides to write something different. He starts reading books that expand his mind. He takes small risks. He repeats to himself, "I am not my environment. I am not my past." It's not easy. Every page he writes feels like it's fighting against the weight of all the old chapters. But he persists. And slowly, his life begins to follow his new story. He becomes the first in his family to graduate, to travel, to build wealth, to create freedom, not because the world handed it to him, but because he rewrote the script his subconscious had been living by. The subconscious is obedient. It doesn't argue with what you give it. It simply follows. If you tell the same story every day, it begins to act it out. That's why people who constantly say, "I'm unlucky," keep finding misfortune. Their subconscious listens and says, "All right, unlucky is what we are. Let's make choices and filter experiences that match." But when you begin telling a different story, "I attract good things. I am worthy of love. I succeed at what I do," it listens just as faithfully. The difficulty isn't that your subconscious won't listen. The difficulty is that you keep feeding it the same old script without realizing it. There's a story about a woman who lived her whole life believing she was invisible. She had been quiet as a child, overshadowed by louder siblings, often ignored when she tried to speak. She carried that belief into adulthood. At work, she stayed in the background, letting others take credit. In relationships, she never voiced her needs, convinced they didn't matter. Her subconscious had one script: stay small, stay silent. One day, she attended a workshop where the speaker asked everyone to write down one belief they wanted to erase. She wrote, "I am invisible." Then the speaker asked them to write the opposite and begin saying it every day, as if it were already true. "I am seen. My presence matters." At first, she laughed at the idea. It felt fake. But she tried it. She repeated it morning and night, whispering it at first, then saying it louder. Weeks later, she noticed herself speaking up more at work. A month after that, she volunteered for a project. Soon, she found people listening to her, respecting her voice. Her life didn't magically change in an instant. It changed because she wrote a new script and repeated it until her subconscious accepted the role. Reprogramming your subconscious isn't about pretending. It's about authoring. It's about recognizing that the old script is not destiny. It's just a draft. And every draft can be rewritten. That's why some people, after years of feeling stuck, suddenly take control and turn everything around. They finally realize the pen has been in their hand the whole time. They stop letting childhood echoes dictate their present. They stop letting other people's words define their worth. They stop letting old failures predict future outcomes. Instead, they ask, what story do I want to live? And then they begin to write it, word by word, action by action, day by day. Picture your subconscious like a library filled with books. Some of those books were written by your parents, some by teachers, some by strangers who didn't even know the power of their words. You've been reading those same books for years, not realizing you can put them down. You can write your own volume with your own voice, with a narrative that serves you instead of limits you. But to do that, you must first walk into the library and take responsibility. You must say, yes, these books are here, but I don't have to keep reading them. I can add new ones to the shelf. I can choose the story that guides me. And the beautiful thing is, once the subconscious accepts a new story, life begins to align. The mind seeks evidence to match belief. Change the belief, and the evidence changes. Tell your subconscious you are a confident person, and soon you'll notice opportunities to prove it. Tell it you are resilient, and life will show you situations where your resilience shines. Tell it you are worthy of love, and you will begin to notice love where before you only saw rejection. The subconscious doesn't argue. It performs. And once it performs a new script, your reality reflects it. You are not a character trapped in someone else's play. You are not bound to repeat the same chapter until the end. You are the author, the gardener, the programmer. You can keep living by default, letting old lines dictate your future, or you can pick up the pen and begin to write something extraordinary. And every small act of rewriting, every new word spoken, every new belief rehearsed, is a stroke of the pen shaping the masterpiece of your life. Let me leave you with this truth. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are not bound to the old story. Every moment you breathe, you are holding the pen. Every choice you make, every word you speak, every thought you entertain, it's all ink on the page of your life. And the page is blank right now. Yes, the past is weight. Yes, the old script is loud. But the past is not the author anymore. You are. And if you don't pick up the pen, the old story will keep writing itself. The question is, will you let it? Repetition creates belief. Belief creates action. Action creates destiny. That's the chain. And you can break it or you can build it. So I ask you, what will you write? Will you keep replaying the script of fear, doubt, and limitation? Or will you stand up today, right now, and declare, this is not how my story ends? Your subconscious is waiting. It's listening. Feed it the words of power, of worth, of possibility. Say them until they echo louder than the doubts. Live them until the world has no choice but to see the new you. Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow is another page wasted if today you stay silent. Change begins in this moment, in this breath, in this choice. Your subconscious mind has been writing your story. But here's the truth. You hold the pen. You are not stuck with the old programming. You are not bound by those childhood scripts. You can rewrite them. You can plant new seeds. You can build the garden you want to live in. So tonight when you go home, don't just tell yourself you'll change. Show your subconscious what's possible. Repeat it. Visualize it. Feel it. Because the moment your subconscious believes it, your entire life will change. The old you will argue. The old programming will resist. But remember this, you are the programmer. You are the gardener. You are the author. So reprogram your subconscious mind and never forget, the story isn't over until you decide it is. And watch your world transform. Your support means everything. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe.